This is an ABC News special report. Verdict in the Boston Marathon bombing trial.
And good afternoon, I'm Dan Harris. We're coming on the air briefly right now because the jury has reached a verdict in the trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the young man who, along with his brother Tamerlan, terrorized the city of Boston by setting off dual bombs at Boston's Marathon, a historic event, on April 15, 2013. 3 people were killed, 260 injured, and the jury has now found Tsarnaev guilty on the first of 30 counts on which he is facing. That count is using a weapon of mass destruction resulting in death. This is a charge that carries the potential of a death penalty. So as we speak, the jury is revealing its findings on the remaining 29 counts, but we do know this. This trial is now headed into a second and key phase, the death penalty phase. The same jury of 7 women and 5 men will now have to decide whether Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who's now 21, will be put to death. I want to bring in ABC's Tom Yamas, who's been covering this trial from the start. And Tom, guilt or innocence never really seemed to be an issue in this trial. Tsarnaev's own lawyer said right at the start, quote, "It was him." But they did try to paint a picture of a young man who was naive and under the sway of his older brother Tamerlan, who, as our viewers may remember, died in a shootout with police. So the hope clearly is that the jury will spare Dzhokhar the death penalty because he was under the sway of the brother, correct?
That is correct, and that's the defense's strategy. And we won't know what the jury will decide until the sentencing phase starts, and that could be as early as Monday. But right now, the big story, the jury has reached a verdict in the Boston Marathon bombing trial in the guilt phase. It took them only about 11 hours, which is not a whole lot of time, to come to this conclusion. And you can imagine those jurors sat through 16 days of torturous testimony, more than 90 witnesses. They had to see that bombing video over and over again. They had to look at graphic images of some of those injuries. And we know right now many of the victims are inside court right now listening to the verdict as it's being read. We know that the family of little Martin Richard are there. His parents are there right now. And one of the most haunting images of this entire trial was the Richard family standing by that fence and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev lurking in the background. Little Martin right by the fence, his mother smiling, and Dzhokhar in the background. Prosecutors said this showed that he could see that family, that he did not care about children. In fact, one of their phrases in closing arguments was, Dzhokhar didn't think these children were innocent. He didn't like them because they were American, a phrase that likely resonated with jurors. Dan?
And 8-year-old Martin Richard is likely to loom large in the death penalty phase of this trial that we move into now. We should say that the jury continues to read its verdicts on the 30 counts against Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, and we know that on counts 1, 2, and 3, he has been found guilty. Let me go back to you, Tom, just to give us a little color, if you would, a little detail, if you would, on the death penalty phase. When is it likely to start? How long is it likely to run, and what will it entail?
It's an interesting question, Dan. We know that the prosecution will start on Monday. They'll have about 3 to 4 days, and then they'll take a break because it'll be Marathon Monday in just over a week. They do not want to have any trial proceedings during the Boston Marathon. It'll just bring up too many bad memories. After that, the defense will have a few days, and the jury will then start to deliberate and decide whether he should spend the rest of his life in prison or whether he should get the death penalty. I've spoken to victims, and they have told me, some of them, they hope that he gets the death penalty. Other victims say their children will never come back, they will never get their legs back, and so they will never truly have justice. Dan?
It's an unspeakably emotional issue for the city of Boston. We now know, Tom, by the way, thank you to you. We now know that on 5 of the 30 counts he has been found guilty by that jury. We should say that there were 3 people who died in the attacks 2 years ago, including Martin Richard, the 8-year-old who you can see on your screen right there. And this whole death penalty phase now and the trial is playing out in an emotionally crucial time because, as Tom mentioned, the anniversary is coming up on the 15th, and then the second running of the Boston Marathon after the day that the marathon was attacked. So the second anniversary of the attack, the second marathon itself take place since the attack, rather, will take place on the 20th. So it is an emotional time in the city of Boston, no question about it. Much more on the jury verdict coming up tonight on World News Tonight with David Muir. Updates around the clock at abcnews.com and on ABC News Radio. For now, I'm Dan Harris. Thank you, and we return you to our regular coverage.
This has been a special report from ABC News.